Okay, today is filled with awesomeness, and we talked about some advanced clustering and classification techniques. So, the only way to be super awesome is wear the Cam Chancellor jersey. So, if you guys don't know who Cam Chancellor is, look up some YouTube video on him. You'll see how awesome. This is like the principal component of awesome. Not only is it 3, 1, which are the first two numbers of pi, it's also a prime number. And it's also our Seahawk Cam Chancellor. All right, so I figured that would help me give a better lecture today. So I want to talk about some new methods, and I want to start thinking about doing some data analysis on some methods and some cluster some data. In fact, we're going to look at dog-cat pictures. You've already seen principal components, and so we're going to take a program and look at some dogs and cats, look to see how they naturally cluster, and then within that context, we're going to go ahead and start applying some of these algorithms to this and learn some new ones. Okay? So good. So let's come over here to our laptop and go ahead and close this down and come over to MATLAB. So we're going to be in MATLAB for a lot of this lecture, and what we're going to start doing is looking at a particular set of data. And this data is going to be looking at dog and cat pictures. So I'm going to load some data. I'll load dog data.mat and load cat data.mat. Oops. So what this data is a collection of pictures of dogs and cats. We're going to take a look at what they look like in a minute. And so part of what we want to think about doing is write an algorithm that will be able to distinguish between a cat and a dog. Okay, that's the simplest thing we can start thinking about doing is that kind of classification and clustering. And in fact, we want to see if this actually produces clustering. And so we're going to do this using some principal component analysis of the pictures. So let's go ahead and take this in. If I actually run this, it's going to produce two data files. One's going to be called dog, one's going to be called cat. Okay, and we will look at their sizes in a minute. So let's go ahead and load this, and we can run this. And when we run this, come back over here, we can look here at size dog. So what it is, it's 4,096 rows by 80 columns. So the way this is arranged in a data matrix is that when we think about collecting our data, each column is a new picture of a dog. And there are 80 dogs. Now it's 4,096, and what I need to do is when I take this data out, I need to reshape it into a picture. These are the pixels. This is 64 by 64. Okay? So that's the way my data is going to be arranged. 64 by 64 with a reshape. Each column is a unique picture of a dog. And the same thing with the cat. I'm going to have 80 pictures of cats to go with my 80 pictures of dogs. And what I'd really like to do is figure out from all those pictures of dogs and cats, those are going to be I can use these as my training sets. And I want to figure out, can I actually write an algorithm that will go through and systematically find a way, in a principled way, to identify the differences between dogs and cats just from the pictures. Okay. So that's the goal for today. Let me erase this here, and we'll start programming. And you see there what I've done is I've loaded this cat data and dog data. That was what the code was calling me to do. And with that, we're going to take that loaded data and start doing some analysis. Okay, so first of all, let's look at what these cats and dogs might look like. So we're going to do for j equals 1 to 9. And so we're going to look at the first 9 cats or dogs. And so what we're going to do here is we're going to make a figure. And we're going to subplot this. J. We're going to go through and make this a grid of 3 pictures. It's a 3 by 3 matrix, and it's going to be the first 9 pictures that we have here of dogs. And the dogs themselves, each dog will be, for instance, the reshape of the dog. You go grab one of the columns, which is one of the dogs, reshape it into a 64 by 64. Okay? Now that reshape is great, and now we can just do an image show of the dog. Oh, sorry, what I called DG. So you're going to go grab this data. You're going to go grab a figure here. You're going to go ahead and put a subplot on. You're going to take each the first 9 columns and do an image show. This is going to give us the picture of the first 9 dogs and cats, or first 9 dogs. So we run this thing. There it is. These are, for instance, some exemplary dogs. Now, there's a couple of interesting things about the way we're doing this, which we're just going to go ahead and take these images. We're not going to do any other processing. One thing that's extremely helpful and makes actually quite a bit better classification algorithm is if instead of looking at the raw images of dogs here, we would actually look at, for instance, use an edge detection type algorithm just to look at for the edges that are important in the picture. And we can do that with, like, for instance, what's called a wavelet transform. But for here, we're just going to actually look at these headshots of dogs, and we're going to try to figure out what are the principal components that represent the dog. We can do something similar for the cat. And the cats, I can just go here, and let's call this instead of DG, we're going to call this CT. For the cat. And I can look at my cat data, which is cat, and we're going to plot CT. So these are going to be the first 9 cats. And there they are. So you see the cats, you see the dogs. One of the things that's, because if you don't do the edge detection, one of the problems is look at each background. You know, this cat has a white background. This one here has a gray. This is a darker gray. So what ends up happening now, the background plays a role. When you look at sort of an edge detection algorithm, it takes, removes the background altogether, essentially. But in either case, we're going to be able to use these ideas and sort of think about this data, where we just want to look at this data in some principal component space. And right away, you're going to start seeing some ideas that maybe we can start using to do some clustering and classification. Okay? So pictures of dogs and cats. And once we have those, I'm going to go ahead and now delete that because we don't need that anymore. That was just to show you what they look like. And so now let's go ahead and take these dog and cat pictures. And what we're going to do, the dog data will be called D. It's going to be in a matrix D. And what we have to do is take the dog file, which is currently in a uint8 format, which is a video, basically an image format. We're going to turn it into double precision numbers because we're going to do math on it. So we need to do that. So all you got to do here is say double dog, and then C will be for the cats, double cat. Okay, so now we have our cat data and our dog data. And now we're going to look at sort of what are the correlation structures between this. So we're going to make a data matrix X. And we're going to basically take all of our dog data and stack it with our cat data. So now what happens is this matrix X, remember the matrix D had each column was a dog, 80 of them. The matrix C was 80 columns of cats. So what I've done here in this matrix X is I've concatenated them together. So now what I have is 160 columns with dogs and cats. Okay? So the first 80 are dogs, the last 80 are cats. That's how I've arranged my data. And what I want to do is start looking at the correlation structure among those dogs and cats. So the way to make look at the correlation structure is to do the SVD. And this is going to be essentially like a principal component, so SVD of that X matrix, and we'll do the economy size SVD. Okay? And what we want to do here is plot a new figure and plot the diagonals of the S, so we can see what kind of, if it's kind of a low dimensional structure or not, how many principal components we might need. And we'll plot that in black circles with a line width of 2. Okay. So this is going to give us a diagnostics or a view of what this thing might look like for our data. And there it is. So this is our singular value decay. And you can see there's one really big dominant mode, and then mode 2, 3, 4, and it just tails off. Okay, now 160 pictures in there, and you can see there's a lot of variance in this data set, right? Each dog and each cat is a little bit different, so you have a lot of things, but you do have some dominant features up here. And what we're going to do is just start to say, okay, let's look at how do these dogs and cats project onto the principal components, okay? We can look at the first 4 principal components. In fact, what I want to do is I want to look at, in the space of the first 3 principal components, what do these each individual dog and cat look like? Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and take that plot out, and we're going to go ahead and start looking at what the dogs and what the cats look like. So let's first look at what the principal components look like. We're going to look at the first 4. So the first 4 principal components, those are the columns of U. And so what I want to do is say subplot 2, 2j. And what I'll do is get one of these eigenfaces, essentially, which is I'm going to go ahead and reshape the column of U that I want here to a 64 by 64. Okay, and then P color this thing with axis off, shading terp, and color map. Oops, let's put a space there, and we'll make a color map hot. Okay, so what I've done here in this piece of code is I've taken it, and I'm going to go do a loop 4 times through, and in each one create a subplot, and I'm going to take the first 4 columns. So here J is going to go through 1 to 4. Here's the column space, so go grab all the rows in this column. So column 1 is the first principal component, column 2 is the second principal component, column 3 is the third principal component, column 4 is the fourth principal component, and so forth. But right now it's in a big vector. You're going to reshape it into a 64 by 64. Yes, and just in case you were wondering what the first principal component of awesomeness is, this is Cam Chancellor. Anyway, it's a well-known fact in the right circles. So I just want to let you know that. And here, this is like just looking at dogs and cats. All right, so we're going to look at what these things look like, shading and interpret it, and then you can take a look. Okay, so there are the first 4 principal components. I don't know to make that. When you do the edge detection, it looks much better, but it's okay. This is just somehow, these are the top ways that things correlate. Now remember, this is the #1 correlation right here. This is sort of, in some sense, the average face that's represented by all those dogs and cats combined. And you can see there's kind of some structure here. There's sort of this, where the nose and mouth region is. You have the eyes right there. You can kind of see them. Then you have some structure here around the ears. Okay? So those are going to be, those are your dominant feature sets. Here again you can see sort of right here some eye-type structures, some things happening around the ears. And so those are sort of how we're going to project every dog and cat onto this basis set. Okay? And it's going to have a unique representation. Each dog and each cat has a unique representation in this basis set. So now what we want to do is say, okay, great, we've taken a look at those basis set we're going to use. Now we want to basically say, okay, why don't I go ahead and take what I know is, in my data set, this X, the first 80 columns were dogs, the second 80 were cats. So I'm going to go ahead and plot the first 80 components, which are actually given by the matrix V. V tells you how each dog and cat is projected onto U. So what I can do is I can say, all right, V tells me, so for dog 1, how does it project onto all the principal components? For dog 2, how does it project on all the principal components? And what I'm going to look at is just the principal component 2, 3, and 4. I'm going to say that the average principal component that's really dominant for all is going to sort of be the dominant thing, but I want to look now at the variance around that average face. So let's just look at principal component 2, 3, 4. We can look at any of them if we want, but that's what I'm going to choose to look at. Okay, so what we're going to do is plot 3. And what we're going to plot here is pull out the first 80. Remember, the first 80 of these are dogs. Okay, the first 80 rows are dogs. The next, from 81 to 160, are cats. And I'm going to plot the second column versus the third column versus the fourth column. And I'll make these black circles, and let's line with this too to make it a little thicker. Okay? We're going to hold on to that, and now we're going to plot on the same plot from 81 to end the second column. So now you're going to go here to the 81st row, which is where you start the cats, all the way to the last column, which is 160, or I could put end, it doesn't matter, and plot the second column versus the third column versus fourth column. And we're going to plot those in red circles, lined with 2. Okay? So that's what we're doing. Let's go ahead and take a look at what this looks like. This is a very important figure for us. And here it is. And let me make it bigger. Okay. So black are dogs, red are cats. And let's do some interactive stuff here. In particular, let's set the rotation up. I can start rotating this around. And you can start seeing at certain angles there. For instance, there's a lot of red that lives over here, a lot of black over here. So you have this idea that the data itself is quite mixed, but there's also the potential to do some separation in that data, right? So you see, let's call it a cluster of blacks, a cluster of reds, but the fact is they overlap, okay? And so we can just, continue to look at this. Here's maybe another viewpoint of that. Again, just rotation. And we're kind of lucky here. This is why we always pick, this is also why I picked 3 dimensions. So it's a little easy to visualize, okay? So we have principal component 1, 2, and 3. And this is the kind of clustering you get. Now, of course, what we're going to see is that you're not going to be able to just using this very basic clustering to do that well, because the red and black are quite mixed in this region, okay? And so part of what our job is to figure out how can I use some of my data analysis skills and some of my clustering algorithms to sort of give me a predictor of how to do something like this, okay? And how to do a principled separation, so I can try to figure out what's my classification algorithm. If you give me a new picture, if I want to label a dog or a cat, how do I go ahead and do that with this? Okay, so to do that, I want to set us up one last step, which is we've got this picture here. And the next step then is to say, all right, let me get rid of this. I don't know what that's doing there. So what I want to do is start setting it up in the sense that I know these are pictures of dogs and cats. So what I want to do is set aside a training set and a test set. So this goes towards this idea of cross-validation, right? So I'm going to, out of the 80 dogs and 80 cats, what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, I'm going to take 50 dogs and 50 cats randomly, okay? And from those 50 dogs and 50 cats that I randomly pick, I'll hold those out. I'll do a training algorithm. I'll try to train my classifier to recognize the dogs from the cats from those 50. Then the remaining 30 of dogs and cats, those remaining 30, I will now run it through the algorithm and ask, is this a dog or a cat? Is this a dog or a cat? So out of those 30 for dogs and cats, it's going to tell me, it's going to rank each one, is it a dog or cat? And I can count up how many I got right, how many I got wrong, and get a percentage of accuracy. It's as simple as that, okay? So that's the way you would do it. And then what you would do in cross-validation, you would do this random selection many times. So you take random 50, train on the test on the 30. Do it again. Take another random 50, train on the 30. Random 50, train on the 30 until you kind of get some kind of average score and you understand sort of how your variance is changing in the accuracy. All right, so how to do that? Well, make up two variables. Q1 is going to be, I'm going to use this random permutation command. Here it is. And Q2 will be the same thing. Okay, why do I have this? Q1, the way you use this command is like this. Random permutation, and you put in a number here, 80, and what it will do is take 1, 2, 3, all the way to 80, basically a set of integers that go from 1 to 80, and it will randomly permute them around. So what Q1 comes back as is the shuffling of 80 in some random fashion. Okay? And if I run it again, it'll give me a different random shuffling of the data. So what I'm going to do is by using this, if I take the first 50 Q1, it's giving me random indices or dogs to pick out, and I'm going to use Q2 to pick out my random cats. Okay, that's it. So let's go ahead and take this here, and then we'll have the idea of being able to have our training set and our test set. All right. So first of all, my dog data is the following. It's the first 80, and I'm looking at 2 to 4. And my cat data is the 81 to 160, 2 to 4. So what I've done here is taken the first 80, which I know are dogs, take columns 2 to 4. In other words, principal components, their projection onto principal components 2, 3, and 4. By the way, these are defining the feature space I want to look in. Okay? The only reason we took 2, 3, 4 is because it was easy to visualize. You can take many more features. You can take 20 features, 10 features. Okay? You can pick which features you want. So this is the idea here, but we're going to just do it based upon that picture. We're going to see how well can I classify with 3 features, and those 3 features are the second, third, and fourth principal component features. For the cat, same thing. Go from column 81 to 160, 2 to 4. So now I've picked 3 features for cats, 3 features from dogs, all from this principal component space. Okay? So that's my data. That is my data now that I want to do the classification algorithm on. So to build a training set, let's call this xtrain. It's equal to, what I can do is take my dog data and take Q1, first 50, all the rows there that are left. And I'm going to put that with my cat data. Again, the first 50, all columns. Okay, so let's walk over through this. So what did I do? My training set now. What I'm doing is I'm going to stack up, okay, the first 50 columns. There's going to be, so the first 50 rows are going to be dogs, and it has 3 columns because I've picked principal component 2, 3, 4. So there's 3 columns of features. There's 50 dogs, and I picked the random 50 dogs given me by this permutation. I stack these 50 on top of another 50, which are the cats. Here are the cats, from 1 to 50. And again, 1 to 50, grab all the features, 2, 3, 4. So this is, here, my training set. 50 cats, 50 dogs. That's what this does. Okay? Now, my test set then is going to be the rest. So I'm going to just go ahead and copy and paste this here. Oops. I don't even know how to copy and paste. All right. Let's do this. All right. So my test set, pretty similar. It's going to be X dog But now, Q1, instead of 1 to 50, I'm going from 51 to the end. Okay? So these are the remaining. End is 80, so go grab the last 30 dogs, and that's in your test set. And then your cat, you do the same thing. You go, but now with Q2, which is a different random variable, 51 to end. Okay? So the first part of this lecture is just setting this up. Training set, test set. These are the components you need if you're going to do some kind of supervised learning algorithm. So the goal will be to build some training algorithms that are going to make use of these training sets of dogs and cats. And let me just run this, make sure there are no issues. There's figure 1. And then I can come over to here. And then you can see here, I've got this Q1 and Q2. And by the way, let's just take a look at what, for instance, Q1 might look like. There they are. See, there's just some random string of numbers sorted. And what I have now is my size of my training set. 100 by 3, 50 dogs, 50 cats. 3 features. Okay? And then my training set, and then my test set. Let's look at that. $60 by 3. I had 30 dogs, 30 cats, 3 features. That's what I'm going to train on. Okay, so we are set up now then to make a go at using some of these algorithms beyond k-means and k-nearest neighbors.